helping you with Acorn and RISC OS computing.
I'm assuming you can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Good. I did see you say that.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to I'm going to do a slideshow for a change. Although I didn't actually make the slides in this thing because I don't like doing it. So I want to mention that I've been making games on RISC OS for 10 years. I've made something like, there's more than 23, but there's like 23 mainline products. So I thought I'd take 10 of them, only 10, and discount them. I thought it'd be a nice place to announce it, actually. So yeah, one from each year. And so if anyone feels like supporting me, they could either like my latest video on YouTube, it's called. It's not a good start to remember the name of the service. Or if they want to, they might want to consider buying one of these games. But of course, many people have, and as I say, I'm very grateful to all the support because it's been a nice experience to share it. So, Hugh Bowman PI, looks like PJ, is a sort of game noir. It's a term invented by Vince Hud on RISC OS, and I like the term, so I'm going to reference it once or twice. It's not PJ. Because it's supposedly set in the 1940s, supposedly, I thought I'd create a style of the slides that was slightly 1940s-esque. I have chosen a more readable font for the rest of the presentation because this one is in some ways barely legible, but it's quite entertaining. Rather than being like a deep dive into technical on a code level, I thought I'd look at the creative process. So how do you kind of come up with something new creatively? And what was the process I used here? And I'm going to look at also the music composition. So I should mention I'm a self-taught musician. I haven't had piano lessons. I had violin lessons for a year when I was 6, and for some reason my parents moved 200 miles away from all violin teachers. I don't know why. Or so it appeared, because I had no more, and I had singing lessons, which was generally useful. But otherwise, I'm self-taught on theory and the instruments I generally play. So whilst music is by feeling, really, rather than by thought, I'm going to look at some of the structure of it, including things like relative keys and the simple chord progression I put in there, because that's all useful to share, because they're like the tools you can build it with. And then my daughter's given me a vast amount of graphics. She's away studying graphics tools at university. Although this game is pixel art, and I'm not sure when we'll finish it because it's her baby. She wants to have it the right way, but it's a work in progress. So concept and graphics. And then I woke up one morning with an idea. Happens to me quite a bit. Some of them are quite bad ideas. Hopefully this one isn't a bad idea. This is what I'll be producing for RISC OS North. A game inspired by a game on the BBC Welcome tape called Yellow River Kingdom, which I really like. And it's great fun for a simple little game that came in 1981 on the BBC Micro. But I wanted to extend that and make it more playable. So, Hugh Bowman, private investigator, but you could consider that this a reference to the Raspberry Pi, I suppose, as well. It's a game noir, so it's a detective game where you have we get given a number of cases to solve, and it's inspired by a number of different things. So I thought it was useful to look at it. So here we can sort of see one of the little robots. I thought, well, okay, you can still have robots, these very basic ones, in a game set so long ago. This is supposedly a Tesla coil, and no technical accuracy. And this is your sort of archetypal detective, Columbo, Inspector Clouseau, person in a dirty Mac with a hat pushed on their head. He does somersaults in this game, so he's sort of recovering alcoholic that's quite athletic, and you'll see that later. But I thought that was comical that he shuffles about, but he's quite athletic. So, okay. All words that we speak are, in a sense, jumbles of sounds, symbols, but it's important that anything that we create has a lineage or a basis to it. And etymology is like this. You look at the lineage of words and how they have evolved. So I thought it was useful to try and create something that was vaguely plausible. Hopefully not Hugh Grant starring as Lou Archer, maybe. But Lou Archer is apparently a detective. This made me think of, film noir, this sort of image. So I turned Lou into Hugh and Archer into Bowman. And that's an example of a creative process. Archers are Bowman and Lou sounds like Hugh. So you might start from there. Now, I follow various YouTubers. Most of them are doing like soldering, repairing cars and things. But at one point in the past, I was following this American YouTuber called the 8-Bit Guy, and he's into 8-bit computers. And this was one of his games that he did. So on the Commodore PET, they didn't have ASCII, unlike we had on the BBC Micro. They had PETSCII, which is a modified character set, and he did a game entirely using these PETSCII characters, which is why it's such a peculiar selection of images. And it was searching for items, which made me think about searching for objects, and these could be clues. So that was my sort of like reasoning. So when you're creating, you're joining like a lot of threads together into one thing and trying to make it coherent. And sometimes when I speak, this happens. You jump around and try and create associations. So as I say, all this together made me think of film noir. And I like the titles and other things like slipping silently out of the fog came murder, escape in the fog, customs agents. It's all very dramatic, And I thought that was fun to play with, really. This wasn't very good, so obviously I didn't use this. But when I make something, I mock things up and I try to explore different ways it could work. And quite often I will either prototype something or mock it up and then throw it away. Wizard Law, which is a game I did nearly 2 years ago, I actually designed in 10 minutes in the car and wrote in maybe about 10 days, and that was fine. That just kind of came together. But other times it's painful, and I have to throw it all away and start again. Various things I don't like here. So I was thinking of making him walk into rooms and go in and out of the screen. This is a game on the Spectrum called Target Renegade. So my brother used to play this quite a lot. I'm far too peaceful to play such things. But I thought this might be a good set of mechanics. But after doing Morphix, which I did for RISC OS North last year, you'll see a screenshot of that. That was done in isometric 3D, which is frankly a very painful experience to do. And I then vowed on a video I did on YouTube that I'd have to do a 2D game next time because it was so painful. I needed a bit of a break. So that's one thing I thought. I'm not sure I like the mechanics. I wasn't so sure about this whole thing going on here. So I had to evolve it. Yeah, I was going to have things like searching, shootouts, and fighting. Possibly I could have had, exploring around talking to characters, what I thought. But I've done things a bit like that before. And what I don't want to do is to repeat myself. I don't want to make things complicated because that might not be interesting or fun. I just might be confused. I firmly believe that simple is beautiful, is a good idea to go with. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I did not want to go, again, making complicated mechanics. One thing I want to run the risk of, because I do 2 completely new projects each year, at least, sometimes 3, and you run a risk of burnout. When I did Morphix, actually, I had at an 18-hour day, I had 2 hours sleep, and then another 18-hour day. So that wasn't good. In fact, that was really not very good at all. It was quite an unhealthy thing. So Morphix I did in RISC OS North is done in this sort of like 2-to-1 ratio that gives you this approximate isometric form. This is lemmings, essentially, because these little things can fall down a hole. You block the hole and you clear the sliding blocks. These are locked to make a path. And there are various puzzles. And that was a right pain to write, to be honest with you. So I thought I have to do something simpler. Now, when I was young, we lived near some people who were getting rid of all their comic books. And so I was born in 1973, but I have actually got this book. And my daughter sort of read it and thumbed it enthusiastically. And one of the characters in this book is I Spy versus the Incredible Mr. X. There we go. Lovely cliche. But you don't see his face. And he's sort of like, this sort of like inscrutable, the invisible person with his chubby hat pushed down. And I thought, well, that might work. I presume this is a reference to Z cars, which I am aware of, which I've never seen. So I ended up then hiding his face. This was generally good. And again, having his hat squashed on like this when I make him do the somersaults, impossible mission, which of course is a play on Mission Impossible, I presume. That was reasonably comic, since he's supposed to be this sort of laconic, sort of alcoholic, incapable character who's capable of athletics, which is quite pleasing. Good enough. Now, Impossible Mission was originally released for the Commodore 64, I believe, and Peter Johnson, who wrote many games for the BBC Micro, did a port. And it has this general form that you go into rooms and search for clues and assemble a puzzle. And every time you die, the time gets shorter. But I didn't keep the time getting shorter. This is obviously some form of futuristic high-tech spy base setup with these robots that sort of float. But I thought if I have a sort of it's a juxtaposition is probably the word, or between this film noir and this, it might be sort of a fun notion. Now, in Impossible Mission, it has a lift that goes between the rooms. And I decided I didn't want to do that. Instead, I'd rather have a car that drove around a compound. Someone on Facebook said this reminded them of a Ghostbusters game, which I should also mention is available for the BBC Micro now. Someone's ported it. And, I thought I'd join those things together because I gave them my goal of having 2D, which helped me not burn myself out. I just created something novel. So that was kind of fun. So it ends up with something like this. What we have here is have a 1940s style car driving around. And it can go 180 degrees. So I animated it and made skidding noises because I thought that was fun. These so-called robots that block you and all these kind of rooms and numbers which look like this. So I put doors in. I've got a concept here where you acquire clues, often in the form of books, but also objects, which then allow you to type free-form text of what you think the answer is. So you've got kind of almost a text element to it, gaming element to it, where you enter what you think the solution is. And you can obviously freeze robots and reset lifts like you can in Impossible Mission. So, it has some, gamed aspects to it, but it seemed quite a fun thing. And it seemed to go down fairly well at the computer show. Now, if I stop my slideshow to work out where I am. So I've got one more slide I shall show you. Here we go. We'll just continue. Yes, there are 3 cases, which my attempt at humour. Hugh Bowman, the bone of contention. There's his ex-lover, which is also an ex-lover of his arch nemesis, so-called Professor von Sparks. His dog has been stolen. So I thought that was vaguely appropriate for a film noir, and didn't want to go too dark. Hugh Bowman in the Shoes of Doom is an artificial intelligence reference. You have to find their Achilles heel. And finally, Hugh Bowman in The Man with No Sense of Direction, which is a reference to myself, since famously I took the 4th exit on a 3-exit roundabout at one of our computer shows because I have an absolutely dreadful sense of direction. In fact, it was one hotel that we stayed in. I found it completely logical, but everybody else found it baffling. So there we go. In this case, your old friend Magnet PI has been got lost and calls you up to take over. So my daughter drew a couple of graphics for me because she could knock this stuff up really nice and quick because it's not cutscenes in it. So if I cut across, and we can watch the flickering calibration screen of Doom, which you don't normally see, but you do on the emulator. I have shared audio, so I don't know how well that'll work with me speaking. So we'll see. Here you go. You've got your sort of like brief, normal things that I have, joystick control, etc., etc. So choose that. So it's pretty corny, I hope. That's traditional under these circumstances. So yeah, as I summarise the plot for you, you have a dog-napped dog, a digi-room. In fact, I've tried to kind of theme a little bit. Here we go. After sepia colours. just turn the sound down a bit. So as you can see, the car does a lovely 180. There we go. I shall nip down here, doing my traditional 90-degree turns. I should mention that this is improved over the version that I sold at the show. Now, the music playing in the background, I'll go over in a minute as to what was involved with its structure. So you can look for his car there. Sorry, that's me. There we go.
What's this?
There we go. And we can see if it gets sufficiently electrocuted.
You gotta be kidding me.
And there we go. I'll briefly show a little more. There we go. Let's go into completely failed that one. We don't have to watch the whole cutscene. You get the general idea. Although I'll do one little bit. Come on. Yeah, you got me lost. There we go. Right. So skip. There we go. Let's see. So, there you go, got your lovely somersault here. I shall somersault over while the hat doesn't fall off, which is very helpful. There we go. Not every house got one of those things in it. Music around it. Let's get a clue. There we are.
I found something. What?
I've got a donut for your health.
What?
This is appropriate. American detectives are supposed to eat donuts. These policemen are, anyway. You've got the book of fingers, anyway. I'm going to search the rest of it, but I'm not going to. That's how I find it's quite fun, but I always liked Impossible Mission anyway. I never finished it. I did finish some BBC Micro games and never that one. I'm going to try if I can get somewhere. Most of these rooms are locked as far as I remember. There we go. Let's go. Put that one on. See, if you've got a card, you can reset all the lifts, freeze the robots, all called to submit an answer. Anyway, not the right answer. But basically, that's what this game is like, and it's, it's a puzzle game. It's quite good fun. But as I say, it's sufficiently. I found it generally quite good fun to play. But that's basically what this is. It's like my 23rd, I think, game altogether. Right, let's go back to the slideshow. So let's see now. Move past that slide. So, musical composition. I mentioned that I am self-taught, but I checked my terms before writing this in case I had any wrong. I did have a couple wrong. So a lot of this is done by feeling. So music is about feelings, principally. And you've got many different forms of music, not just the Western ones that we know. You can say Bach is quite logical in terms of the structure with the cadences and relationships. But I like Indian classical music quite a lot. And there's like rolling timings against that. You've got interesting tunings and challenging instruments. I've tried playing tabla before, and it's a very hard instrument to play. Not managed to try playing sitar, but yeah, I'm generally quite interested in those forms. And they're all done, I believe, verbally and not written down, because a lot of it is in the subtleties of how it's presented. Whereas in our forms, it's the same, really, because play guitar and piano, sure, you've got your musical notes, you've got your time, but a lot of it is in the subtlety of how people play. It isn't present on a page at all. You've got the odd word like andante, which I believe means walking pace, and so on. But, that doesn't tell you much. It's also why I think AI music is such a disaster, because, of course, it has no experience or context and no insight. So you end up with kind of something a bit like Muzak, I think, which is just awful. But there we go. I don't know why I would want to listen to it personally, but it's to each their own. So my limited, well, I say I'm always learning, always open-minded. And that way, you always know. The more you know, the less you know. So, pentatonic minor. I used F. An important thing to know about the piano compared to, say, the guitar. Now, the guitar. Well, let's go back to more basic again. So, in Western music, we have 12 semitones in the scale, and every octave you go up. So you've got C, say on one end here. That's C there. This is double the frequency here, and this goes up in a curve. And I've programmed this in RDSP and one other synthesizer. Now, in a real piano and in digital pianos, they simulate this. It is not perfectly equivalent in each scale that you play. It's basically not equal tempered. This means that the key of F does not sound the same as the key of C. It doesn't feel the same. And because I have synesthesia, which means I see colours in tones of sound, it doesn't look the same either. So here we have, in the case of a so-called major melodic, I believe, or diatonic or something, you've got, these are all semitones, but these are the intervals. So to go from C to D, there's two semitones here. Go from E to F, there's only one. Similarly, from B back to C again, there's only one semitone. So when we transpose, right, in F, try to remember what it is now. You've got to go and have the same number of intervals. So you see, you've got to go to here, but you're only supposed to have one. So as far as I remember, in F, that'd be the next note in the major melodic scale, and then it would carry on like that. Now you've got so-called major scales that people generally say feel happy for whatever reason, right? Minor scales might feel more dramatic. Well, these are the notes of the 5-note scale called the pentatonic minor, which is also known as the blues scale, I believe, I understand. So what you do is you have these 2 notes are dropped by a semitone, but you only have 5 notes. Now, if you look carefully, or if you understand these intervals, you have simple ratios in the waves, and this has an effect. So you find this has been invented independently around the world many times. In Japanese music, it's present famously, So Chinese, I think, probably, and there's only other ones because it's effectively a relatively simple tuning, which is approximated here. But this is central. When you play things on this, they all tend to sound, all your tunes tend to sound good. Can't really go wrong with it, which is great. It's also a very moody kind of emotional thing. It's not too cheerful. If you want to play something that sounds like Songs of Praise, stick in major melodic C, and then make sure your chord progressions are based on C, F, G, perhaps D. People call it because it's a number sometimes 1, 4, 5, or 1, 4, 3, 6, or whatever. Simple progressions like that. Anyway, we're focusing on stuff that's got a bit of edge to it, which is what the pentatonic minor sounds like. Now, the other thing, because this sort of has a sort of a fairly basic kind of jazz in this. Another fun thing I've noticed people doing in jazz, what you call a chromatic scale, which basically just means all the semitones, as far as I understand it. And what you have on the bass on some of these things are people just walking up and down the chromatic scale. And what I've done in the music you've just been hearing is I mix a bit of this chromatic scale up with the pentatonic minor. So I might do half of the chromatic and then jump into the pentatonic minor, which creates a nice effect. And then I constructed it so it walks up and down. But I'm not thinking about it very hard. It's about feel. So you're not quoting somebody. So we're all talking to each other every day. We don't consciously quote other people, I hope. So when you're making music, you're expressing something based on how you feel or an intent. You're not directly quoting another piece of music. This can happen, sometimes, but it shouldn't really, because every composer, every writer has their own way of talking. Every person has their own voice. You can write a bit of software which can recognize words written by anybody by training on things they've written because they make decisions. And the same in music. I like going down to something called the relative minor, quite a lot. And Peter, I think you said some of your music as well, because I've been listening to your grooves. That was really cool. Thanks for sharing that. So we'll have preferences and things we like the sound of. So the other element I'll draw attention to in my kind of language of this is relative keys. And they're really great fun. So I found, when I've been I don't do like huge amounts of open mics and jamming, but from time to time I do. And sometimes it's fun when people are playing in one key, I go and play in a different one because it creates a great, nice effect. So happens that the notes of the pentatonic minor in F agree with the major, I'll say major melodic, whatever, I believe that's what it's called, in A flat, right? So if you remember the intervals, because this is piano and the white notes are all this major scale, you can see that this is the same interval. You go from C to D, A flat to B flat, right? And then we've got sort of C over here, that's equivalent to this bit here. And you've got your little semitone that we have to have, like we have here, and so on. And this agrees. Now, also true, although I don't think I've shown it here, if you take, right, I'm trying to go too quick because we're having to move things around in our heads, which I enjoy doing, but can sometimes be painful. If you look at this pattern here, you can take that pattern and play that in any key as well. So if you look, we've got, it's a third semitone. We can do that here in key of C. That brings us on to E flat. And look, we've got an E flat over there, right? And then if you sort of imagine, right, we're going to have like the equivalent of here, which would be this one here, which is the equivalent of F. So we've got, you can have a pentatonic minor, believe it or not, in C, and it will agree with the notes in A flat as well. But because they're positioned differently relative to the root of the key, you have different kind of like intervals introduced, which is the same as having a chord, because chords, you play 3 notes at once. So for C major, you play C, E, and G, right? But when you're playing these keys against each other, the notes start to fall and create harmonic patterns, which means you're playing harmonic music, even with single notes, if that makes sense. So one of the pieces of music in the game, which I'll break down a little bit, I'm not going to go and break the whole thing down, uses these as tools. Now, when I'm composing, I might use a tool as a guide and then break all the rules and throw it away. But and you do it based on how you feel. But knowing the words to write or the letters you can use, knowing how you can strike the drum, knowing how you can strum the guitar, means it gives you tools to express yourself. And that's what this is about. And I find this quite interesting. So this is what I've learned works. And I don't know how I worked that out, but as I say, it's something that I understand. So, as I say, here's another element, right? So we talked about chords briefly. So in Western music, we've got standard tunings, and we've got, which is based on this 12-note scale, and we have standard chords. So here if we have just these 3 notes, we have A flat major, right? As we have here, if we have C, we have C, D, and G for a major chord. And we look at how many intervals. You've got 1, 2, 3, it's the 4th one. 1, 2, 3, 4th one. See, it's exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So basically you have a major chord. Now, if you played A flat up here, which you can do perfectly well, you just got your A major. But if you drop it down 1 note, given we've got from A to G, which is 7, right, you then got a 7th. And 7ths are kind of intrinsic to jazz. And the reason is you've got a kind of pleasing beat frequency, harmonic interval thing going on here between A flat and G, because they play against each other. And if you play those 2 notes next to each other on a piano, directly next to each other on their own, those 2 notes probably won't sound very nice, generally. Chopstick might start the way, I don't think it does, but anyway, it won't sound nice. But if you introduce other notes as well, because jazz breaks the rules of music a bit and is slightly dissonant, and music should have, if you like, some dissonance in it to give it energy, essentially. It has to. If you think about my understanding about how a jazz singer sings, or a rock singer sings, right, or a pop singer, like, Gary Newman or whatever, they're not always bang on key. And it's another thing about modern music I get be a bit bothered about. There's a tendency for some of these record companies to pitch correct all the vocalists, which kills everything, because music, like in Indian music, is slightly off kilter. It's expressive, it becomes dynamic, it becomes alive, and that's so important. Now, progressions. Now, I mentioned about your songs of praise, kind of like equivalent progression, which might be like, or some basic rock, like CFG and all that kind of stuff. Well, something Paul McCartney used to do, and it's quite a natural thing to do if you have strings, say, synth strings. You start off with your 7th chord. Now here we have our 7th, A flat and C, right, and E flat, and I've moved my G down here deliberately because now I'm going to be fairly lazy and create a nice little progression. This was, I think, in music, you often have a phrase. The phrases are often symmetric. They might contain an even number of steps in Western music and probably other ones. And there were 2 progressions. So I think you call it A-B type, probably, I think. And I'm doing the bass line against this on an interval that makes sense musically. So I think I'm doing the bass line using C and F as a root for it and transposing it. But here we have a 4-chord progression done in this really easy way. So all I do is move my finger one at a time. This is a Paul McCartney-esque approach. I think he did it yesterday. So this changes our lovely A flat major 7 into an F minor 7, right? Which is our lovely pentatonic minor. We'll very much like that. And then you can drop down the last finger down to E flat. Now you've got an inversion, as we call it, of this major chord, because you could play it with any root note you like, and move it up and down the keyboard. So there we go. And then finally we move down the note to D. This is really just something we'd call a descend, I believe. Again, self-taught, so some of the terms may be wrong occasionally. But if you look carefully, G, F, E flat, D, if I remember rightly, that's in A flat. And all I'm doing is walking down. But to make it more fun, I play the last note up here because that kind of creates a loop. And what you're trying to do when you make phrases is you're trying to make them connect to each other so that you have something which will flow. Otherwise, it can be jarring if there's some kind of unrelated gap. In the same way, we've got a very simple progression here. You want to have a logical join to the next phrase you make so that it could be a new phrase or riff, as they call it, in itself. So then the whole thing becomes like a natural progression, and that's like when you get into I think Bach and all this kind of like natural music theory. But with jazz, you can break the rules. You can go across keys. You can put notes in there, and then you can get complementary notes. And really, with the G, that's kind of like with the 7th chord, kind of a little bit, tiny bit dissonant. Now I've tried to illustrate. It's all very well we're talking about this or trying to explain it, but I thought it was nice to show it. So I went to the garage last night, my little studio, and I tried to record something. So I'll play that, and it sort of illustrates what I'm talking about. So I'll play it initially quickly. That's basically what I've described, a chromatic scale followed by a little bit pentatonic. And I walk up from where I was. Basically that's on the minor 3rd. And that's going down then from C. I then do it a bit slower. So this is a chromatic scale, so just a semitone at a time. And that is basically F minor based on the pentatonic. And then we go to the minor 3rd. Start walking up, because you're supposed to walk with these bass lines. And obviously a blues scale type riff. And then down from C. And then just down the 5th of the octave. And that, oddly enough, is E flat, which brings you straight back to F, which creates a loop. Now I just play a little bit of this, but not too much, because I'm sticking with the camera between me, which is a pain. And that just goes down to C minor. So that's all I did there. And then we got our 7ths. So I'm seeing what this sounds like. See, that sounds pleasing enough, but very, very simple. And that's on the B part, effectively, in the music of the game we were listening to. And obviously then it agrees. So I just showed you the descend here, which is effectively, I wasn't that conscious I'd done that, but that's what it is. So yeah, kind of makes sense. And then if you go onto piano, you can play pentatonic. And that, of course, all agrees with the notes of the set of the we just played. So they're straight here. Now this is called syncopation. We're just off the beat. There's another key element. It's really nothing too structured here. It gives a general idea. That's basically what that was all about, wherever the presentation's gone. So we'll go back in. So hopefully that, I think it's important to share this stuff. Ooh, don't insert a slide. You have to have something that goes and throws you, don't it? So otherwise, it proves I'm really here. I'm not some kind of AI talking to you. Here we go. So, that'd be rather disturbing. So, my daughter's game is very pixely that she is making. What we have here is Pixel Esper, which is like, I guess, a run and gun thing, where you can go and kill these ghosts in some way. The resolution she wanted wasn't really low, but she likes pixel art. So, yeah, it should be fun when we get to it. She wants to do I think the music in a Japanese instrument as well, a Japanese style instrument. So she keeps asking me to buy a Japanese instrument. She's learning Japanese too. So maybe I should get her to speak some Japanese and we can have a Japanese mode and localize it so we can play it in English or Japanese. That's a good idea. I have to tell her that. Anyway, that will come along when she's ready. And I have started writing it, but it's her baby, so it will be the way she wants. And she's going to have a tutorial and all kinds of magical stuff. Now, this is more or less the last slide. I don't like my presentations too long. Well, that's not too bad. So this was Yellow River Kingdom. Maybe you should actually run this game in a browser because I really like it. And it's incredibly simple. What I want to do is to have the basic premise of the game the same, which is essentially you're a king. Presumably in China, I believe. I don't know. Could be anywhere, I suppose. And you have to plant rice in the fields, defend the villagers against bandits, shore up the river so it doesn't overflow. But I thought it'd be fun if you could go and play some days and actually go and, contribute to building of the dam, fight some bandits, and actually have it in some interactive elements, maybe some characters. And then, because this game will be probably a little too long, even if the days were 10 minutes long, and it only had a few seasons, it would probably take far too long to play. So I thought I might use intertitles saying it's a hard winter or whatever, things like that. So why not? Because I haven't got a lot more, except I was going to do the music, some of the music using a kalimba. And this is an African instrument, but it has a lovely tone to it. And if anybody's ever seen Minecraft, it sounds a bit like this. So I've composed some music on it. But yeah, it's you won't be able to hear it because the noise cancelling will stop it, I should imagine. But it's a brilliant little thing. It's what it is metal tines, as you won't hear, and it resonates in the box. But it sort of sounds a bit like a music box, maybe a little more. It's really lovely, and it has a big cousin called Umbera, which is like a multiple octave thing. They sound really lovely. So I believe that I can probably drag a browser window onto my screen. There we go. And I can go to the wonderful bbcmicro.co.uk. I don't know if I should be using JSP, but anyway, I will. Hopefully it'll find it. We only had one thing go wrong, albeit only minor. So we can try and play it, and I can do really badly. I love this little game. Back from 1981. In glorious teletext and 8 colours. So you've got your 3 villages, the Yellow River and the mountain, and you've chosen to make important decisions. Yeah, you get the general idea. 3 seasons, apparently winter growing and harvest. I may do this because that seems reasonable. So you've got to plant rice every year and grow it. And yeah, we need the river for the rice, but presumably it flows. So you've now got this game only involves making simple choices and how many people you put on things. So obviously my game will be a little more than this because obviously you probably feel I cheated and just ported the code, which I would have done. But I don't do that. I promise you I won't do that. How many people should defend the dike? Oh, I don't know. Let's do 100. Working, is it winter season? Well, I suppose I ought to put a few more in there. Work in the fields in the winter? I don't know, not many. They'll probably watch the river overflow, so don't put enough people in there to defend it. There's a random element to it, which I think I'd keep. This seems pretty bad, actually. Worrying losses. There we go. I'm also trying to die like I did in the other game. Growing season. No people should defend the light, obviously. 200 people work in the fields, and everyone else. How many baskets of rice? Oh, 3,000. There we go. Obviously, that's a good decision. Probably not. I think I'm going to die now. If they don't execute me, then somebody else will. Another flood. I've done a bad job there at defending them. Disastrous losses. That's an improvement. Okay. 107 people. Who's defender diets? Harvest? No, 100. Working the fields, 7. There we go. Unsurprisingly, when I've been robbed, because I have no one defending the villages. So that's not too hard. And they all died. So, yes. Never mind. But you have the general idea. Hopefully I'll do better if I actually... So we'll go ahead now. So we're now on to the traditional question and answers. I can see the chat saying things at me. Well, Sparky was fun, Vince. Okay, Vince is talking about the thing similar. Yeah, I wrote something which is really rubbish when I was at school. You could be a gardener or an engineer, goodness knows why. They're quite good fun, these kind of games. So, are there any questions? Was that enough presentation?
Everybody, lots of questions, no doubt, from everybody. Unmute yourself, Agnes.
Yeah, with regard to Chinese instruments, usually they have no sustain. So if you get a traditional European instrument, stringed instrument, stick foam under the strings near the bridge. You're halfway there.
Okay. Oh, yes, I noticed that with the Japanese ones. Well, I could probably try to emulate it.
Yeah.
That's interesting there. But I liked the reference with the African instruments. As I say, you won't be able to hear it, I don't think, easily. You've got a lovely sound to it. But that's a good point. I've heard that was some Japanese folk music from my daughter.
Yeah.
About people going fishing and she's sort of yelling, but at the same time it was rather good. But it was, different.
Well, I don't know if they all performed in the open air, but they didn't have like cathedrals to give you reverb. So everything started and stopped very quickly. So
it's style, isn't it, really?
So I probably went bonkers when they saw Les Paul.
Probably. So.
But they do have some very strange instruments. I went to Hong Kong. I just went to a traditional shop. And they're just sort of like lots of salter things, just a whole set of strings across a shaped object. And some of them are like 6 foot long, just ridiculous.
Well, it's... I've got a question. Do you ever coding or creating graphic audio? I like doing both, but one reason why I like doing video games is because I can do the graphics and the audio. Because at work, in my day job, there's no visual side. It's all algorithms and things. So I enjoy doing both, really. But I love doing video games because I can do the graphics and the audio, and the code acts as an enabler for it. In terms of back to audio briefly, I think I wonder how difficult it is to go and get one of those Chinese instruments. I wonder if I could play it. Interesting. But yeah, so I do video games because I like doing the art side of it. But if I say to people, hey, do you want to go and buy my CD or whatever? They say, CDs? What's that? It's a good vehicle for it. Any other questions?
I think they used to have CDs for Spectrums eventually, didn't they? The final incarnation and fast loads.
Did, actually.
Yeah, I seem to remember that.
That makes sense. We've got a top tip from Peter. Top tips for YRK addicts. This is the Yellow River Kingdom. The river never floods in the harvest season. There's no crops to tend the fields in winter. But if you protect lives too well, you get it with overpopulation. And thus came ending famine. Okay. This is useful. I have to study the code for modes of failure because that's interesting. It's interesting. I've never ended up in that situation. Okay. Sorry, Peter, what did you say about Chinese instruments? Sorry, my brain.
Yeah, I don't know if they operate on the same scale.
I doubt it.
Obviously, again, Indian and it's Eastern generally, East versus West, isn't it? 12 notes versus 10.
Well, I mean, I once when I was years ago, I programmed a 16-note scale, on my
Oh, right.
on sampler, but everything sounds like a diminished chord, so it wasn't the best decision. A diminished chord, by the way, is where it's basically where you bring it down quite a bit. I think all the intervals are fixed. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Similar. Is it 2 then 1 then 2? It's a strange chord. It's where you almost never get in pop music, from
No.
what I understand. But everything sounds like that. So probably the most on pop type thing I've ever done. But you could have multiple different scales as long as you've got interesting mathematical possibilities. But I think the thing about our scale that we have with our 12-note scale is it's regular. But a lot of these ones are tuned with the intention you tend to stay within the scale.
Right.
And you don't transpose.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed. And have you noticed that, Peter? Or
I've not got a good enough ear for that, but I do remember seeing something. There was one of the guys that worked with Bob Moog in the early days, and he says, "Oh, I hate an equal tempered thing if it's in a particular key." And I thought, he must be very annoyed with lots of Western music. I've just got used to it. So,
well, again, the Moog, the advantages of going out of tune, the hotter they got back then.
Well, that's right.
Have auto tuning circuits, because someone told me at work I was wrong about this, but this is because when resistors get hot in the simplest sense, or even with transistors, they get their characteristics change when they get warm. It's not it's not a digital thing. It's not like it's the same as an analog synthesizer is the same as a stringed instrument. It's a physics thing. If you simulate that, it doesn't come up the same at all.
Yeah, they have a thing called a temp co-resistor, which works in inverse, but the right amount. So, like one resistor costs you about £2, but helps keep it in tune. But I was watching another thing with a guy from South America who's designed a whole different way of doing voltage-controlled oscillators with his own circuit, and it tunes in about half a second rather than 10 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on your synthesizer. So that's interesting. He actually rethought it all because he didn't have all the popular ICs available to him. So he went, right, well, we'll just use transistors and standard stuff.
If you use I've explained to other people, in a synthesizer, you've got a simple circuit, I believe, with like an RC resistor and a capacitor, and you can build an oscillator with it, right? So as a capacitor discharges, the resistor can change the rate of charge. And you've got a different kind of frequency. They're very simple to. And modern synthesizers, say modern from 1970s onwards, I think, late 70s, when microchips came along, they started packaging the stuff up inside a chip or an integrated circuit, and this had the effect of making it easier to build things, but also made them more stable. If you go back to the Doctor Who synthesizers of the 60s, which are the VCS3 built by these creative mad, was it Russian? I can't remember. Someone was involved who was...
Peter Zinoviev is the actual guy who ran EMS, but they had another British guy, Tristram, I think it was, who's actually invented all the stuff like vocoders and stuff that EMS made, and I think he still builds them.
That's actually one of his employees that builds them, is Peter Wood, I think. But so I've got a question I'll answer in the chat in just a moment. But they use germanium, I think, they use probably germanium transistors, I presume. So if you get transistors, right, then the thing they're much more sensitive in these systems to temperature. So they go a bit mad, which is where those synthesizers are. Well, that's just mad anyway. I urge people to look it up. The EMS VCS3 used by Pink Floyd and other people had a patch panel for linking things together, and a joystick for its main controls.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just a completely mad thing. And it's the heart of Doctor Who sounds from the 1960s. So I normally play music live in answer to Notrix question. So I record just the audio on Cubase as a multi-track. I sometimes have sequence, but very rarely. Sim, who I do music with, likes to sequence his stuff, but I like to play it. I like to play it from beginning to end and try not to edit it, because I find that hard, and that helps me. Because again, it's something I like to try to do. Yes, I did want to release a music sequencer, and I had done some work on this, which I'd hoped to release an RDSP with a sequencer feature on it. So I've written this. I'm going to do an RDSP update because one of the requests for a feature with my virtual sound chip, RISC OS digital signal processor, which gives you 16 channels of audio, variable speed sample playback like the Amiga did easily, and tone generators like the Commodore 64 and the BBC Micro, envelopes and so on, and effects. I wanted to make that compatible with the fact that not on RISC OS is always 44 kilohertz. So I worked out how to make it play at different 26 kilohertz, whatever it used to do. Because if you play it with, I think, certain other modules, it needs to go at that speed. So I worked out how to do this. And basically, it's the same technique I used to play all the different notes to make the frequencies agree with each other. Something called a phase accumulator oscillator. So I worked out how to do it. It sounds fancy, but all it really means is you remember the remainder. So when you're drawing a waveform and you've got a little bit over for the next one, you just remember where you got to. It's a very, very simple thing. It's just a counter, really. It sounds more interesting than it is. But I had to sort of work out how to do it. So yes, I would like to put that into RDSP, and I've got something called ROCC Tracker, which I wanted to introduce. It's a matter of, because these computer shows happen, I try and help them happen, you know. And I would urge people to come to RISC OS North and do it. It's good fun, if they can. I've got to have something to release. I've got to keep releasing things for every single show because it helps the shows really. So I'm continuing to work on this. Probably if I have a chance, I have a sort of a mad few days where I do that and nothing else. Don't sleep, perhaps. It's not good for my health. But yeah, the answer is yes, I would like to, and I have done some work. Any other questions? This silence.
Yeah. Everybody's gone quiet.
No questions there.
You've done all the questions on the message board, haven't you?
I have indeed. But yeah, as I say, you know, thanks for inviting me to talk. As I say, I'm going to keep making stuff as long as I keep coming up with ideas, which I've got ideas for the next 2 or 3 years, so I should be okay. I'll probably keep going after them, as long as people, you know, are interested in what I'm doing and think I'm doing the right sort of things. You know, it's always hit and miss with some of these things. I think I've got games that I definitely prefer more than other ones. You know, but there you go. Keep on making it until I get to hopefully to 40 games. Maybe that's not this number. Painful.
You used to do games on Android and other such platforms. Are you still doing that sort of thing?
Well, I've got a port to Android of Mop Tops, and I port to it. I find RISC OS more fun to work on. So porting away from it, I like the community bit. I enjoy going to the shows and meeting up with everybody. And but yes, I do have intentions to do. I think Sophia would like me to take her game and make it run on multiple platforms like RISC OS first, and then move on from there.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I do intend to, but RISC OS is more fun for me to work on. It's like therapeutic to write for. Because I've done 23 plus games on it for that reason.
Yeah. Good stuff.
A general thing, Tony. I think one or two people have raised issues about your games on the RISC OS for Linux, wherever you are. That was the
That's right. That's right. I think it's to do with the. I think some of this system doesn't support sound fully. I think, if I understand correctly. So RDSP would either need modifying, or I could make it so that the sound is optional and give a warning saying that the sound isn't turned on, because it's not on there. But I have to go in. I mean, I'm assuming what's missing is the BBC Micro type sound APIs I'm using. Because I understand the older games worked, so it must be something I can do to extend it. But what I can do, I've got to work out whether I extend it, which might be the right thing to do, or just make it so that people don't install RDSP that will tolerate it. And maybe it's a better thing to do. And I said on the forum earlier, just before this meeting actually, I spent a couple of weeks and I put a warning up at the top of the screen, put all the checks through the code to say, well, if it's not been loaded, then don't try and make any sounds. Obviously, they sound wrong. So I could do that. But yeah, something that I wasn't aware of, but I guess I haven't used RISC OS on Linux which is I wasn't aware of it. Thanks for highlighting that, Chris. Got
a couple more questions, I think, in the.
That's it. Here we go. Would you be against using AI? So I tend to prefer not to use AI. I sometimes look at AI for inspiration, occasionally for ideas, but not generally. And the reason comes back to the other point, which is that, in my opinion, these systems are using something equivalent to symbolic reasoning. So if you take machine learning, which I've written some things in, which are based on statistical measures to classify, then that works fairly well because you're dealing with numbers and computers actually are inherently numeric. So a numeric system gives a defined output. Experience is not something you can represent with a symbol. Experience is something entirely separate to any kind of symbolic representation. And this is at the heart of various philosophical debates around consciousness and things. But fundamentally, the reason why AI systems produce things that are sort of dreamlike or bizarre or incoherent is because there's no experiential inference. So when something is right or it looks right, it's not something you can codify in an algorithm. It's an emergent property. It's something ethereal. It's something deep, even mysterious. So AI graphics or AI things in general, if they're being used for the kind of content creation, lack coherence and are actually mildly jarring to me most of the time. So I tend to avoid them. So, but again, it's another tool that exists, but it's something I don't use deliberately for that reason, because there isn't coherence and it creates a disjointed element. Am I set on Yellow Valley Kingdom? I'm not set on Yellow Valley at all. So I tend to take a working title on a project. So the working title may get changed to something better. I think I did a game called Lightgate, which is apparently a device in physics that you use in systems. But it was originally called Escape to the Light, but I thought Lightgate was shorter and more interesting and made more sense. So absolutely not set on Yellow Valley Kingdom. I could come up with a totally different name, and I'm open to suggestions. Kingdom of the Yellow Valley. Yeah, I like that, Vince. I'll tell you why. K is an explosive word, and so it's a bit more impactful. So I'm pretty sure. Oh, there we go. It's over here. That's on my notepad in Windows 11. Kingdom of the Yellow Valley. So yeah, I like that. That's well, I shall do the traditional thumbs up now. There we go. That's a good name, Vince. Thank you. There we go. That's a bit of a win. No, I often take working titles, like working concepts, and it just doesn't work, so I have to ditch it, basically. That's a good one. So yeah, it's a good plan, that. Anything else? Any further suggestions? Any alternative names? Currently keen to the Yellow Valley's in the lead. Well, I will be doing that. I could call it Keen to the Yellow River, but maybe that's not so good. The Valley's better. I'm going to do it as a top-down game, was the idea. Does that sound good? I sort of like the idea of a top-down thing because it's quite, I haven't done one for ages. And again, it means I have to draw faces, which is brilliant because that takes a while. And it's like in animation, you want to cover up the mouth so you can't see the mouth moving. Trying to avoid work wherever possible. Any more for any more? Could demo Morphics, I suppose. But, Valley of the Yellow Kingdom. Valley of the Yellow Kingdom. Valley of the Yellow Kingdom. I prefer Kingdom of the Yellow Valley. I think. It's Yellow Kingdom Valley? Valley Kingdom? Yeah. I think the author was a good idea. It'd be nice if I could have one of my games is called Spy Mission: The Ice Caves of Dr. Atom, right? Which is my longest title. So it'd be quite fun to maybe have a very long name like that. So, yellow of the Kingdom Valley. It's like, well, yeah, nothing wrong with being silly. I've been silly most of the time. It's good for you. Well, of course, why yellow? I guess I want to have a homogeneous thing. Okay. Yes. I could call it an empire or something. Empire of the Yellow Valley Kingdom Second Dynasty. I don't know. I think that's a bit too long. Empire of the Yellow.
You're on the way one now.
Yeah, dynasty. Second dynasty. Yeah, Empire. Okay, maybe not.
You need something that can be like 3 or 4 letters that sort of shortened to give it some secret meaning.
Yeah, yes. Valley of the Yellow Kingdom. Well, indeed, I could have other colours. It doesn't have to be yellow. It's a good point. Limited colours. Indeed. I have to work on that. I think actually the river was actually yellow. It implies there's something wrong with it. Probably not very good for you. So I might want to consider that as well. Indeed. So as I say, I think this could be quite a fun game because you could do some building. So you've got, I'm trying to almost do a Minecraft reference. Yellow River by A.P. Daly. Sounds like some sort of novel, Vince.
We know a 70s song called Yellow River.
Oh, really?
Yes, those oldies.
That was actually an old schoolboy joke. Yellow River by I.P. Daly.
Oh, sorry, I.P. Daly. We're with you now. Sorry, I wasn't quite in the right mode. Very good.
There was another one, Rusty Bed Screens by I.P. Knightley.
That's right, yeah. I like thinking of those silly book names. What was on I thought up recently? Outside Toilets and Their Placement by W.C. Fields.
That's quite good. So I can put in the footnotes.
Yes.
That'd be plagiarism, wouldn't it?
Okay, any more questions? Do we need the share screen still, Tony? Or
I can stop sharing. I'll stop sharing now.
You'll see all the mugs in huge.
Indeed. Indeed. There you go. Excellent. Copy these comments because it makes me think. But also, I want to keep a record of that. Brilliant. Some good thoughts there that I really appreciate. But yeah, I've already got. How long have I got to write it? 3 months.
3 months.
Brilliant. I'm not going to do 2 18-hour days back to back again with 2 hours sleep.
No,
That's a bit dangerous because I actually drove down.
not a good idea.
I mean, I was completely safe, but I don't think I did my body any good.
I think what you have to do is lie to yourself about deadlines.
Well, I did that, but
by a fortnight.
I did that. But the trouble is like it always comes down to content. So in the original game, he randomly generates all the rooms.
Right.
So that would have been a good idea. The only game I've done as a generative thing is Spy Mission with the Ice Caves, Dr. Atom, whatever it's called, where all the caves are generated by an algorithm, which works well enough.
Well, I seem to remember hearing somewhere that you finished your latest game at the London show at 5 o'clock in the morning or something. So
yeah, it was about that. That's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I think Lightgate was a similar thing, but that was harder. But yeah, I did an 18-hour day, 2 hours sleep, 18-hour day, and because I wanted to finish it, and with Lightgate, I did 3 or 4 days, which were 12-hour days long, and about 3 or 4 hours sleep. I still finished it, but this one, I'm optimistic it won't be so bad because I think I can make it generative, and if I can make it generative, I won't have to design models. Google to archive before the show. That would help. That would help. Okay, we've got various tips and tricks here. No deadline.
No deadline then.
Oh.
Well, I wouldn't look at the archive comes out on time, if you're lucky.
It's difficult to come up with content. I mean, it's the hard bit, really. You see, I think some people do games over 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of trying to do quite a few. But if you generate it, obviously you've got less time. If I did use AI to generate everything, music, graphics, and so on, I have a lot less to do. But I think it'd be less fun, really. And the end result might be mildly disturbing. I mean, there's these videos online with Elvis as Captain Kirk of the Enterprise, and and things like that, and Doctor Who as well.
Yeah.
And it looks like some sort of dream, honestly. It's all inconsistent. But yes, I'm not sure where all that's going to go. To be honest with you. But there we are. I'm not going to use AI, I promise, to do it. I will write my own AI if I do it, which won't be that intelligent. So, that's too much time I have.
Right. Any more questions? Mm-hmm. No? Okay, well.